I'm really excited because Here Lies Love is, it's not your typical production. It's, kind of I'm discoed out for you. I'm wearing the disco clothes for you today.
Thank you.
It's a disco on Broadway. And I'm just curious, as someone who, went to Studio 54 back in the day, which is, makes me so envious. If I could teleport back to any era, I would go to Studio 54. What kind of nightclub experience what kind of disco experience were you trying to create for the audience at this show?
I didn't go to discos that often, but a couple of times when I did, I would go sometimes when there was a live act. It might have been like a Paradise Garage or some other place where there would be a live act like Grace Jones or Gloria Gaynor or whoever, and who had a hit at that moment. But their main audience, some of these artists, was people in dance clubs. It wasn't like a rock audience. It was a dance club audience. So that's where they went to perform. And they performed by having these little platforms around the periphery of the dance floor. They didn't have a stage. These were dance clubs. And they would sing live to their backing track of their song. And they would maybe have an extended mix. So the song might be like 8 minutes long instead of 3 minutes. And then they might do like another song that they had, and that would be it. That would be their show. And I thought that was fun. I'd never seen a performance like that before. Thought what, and I'd often heard DJs talking about the arc of an evening, and talk about how you bring the audience up in excitement, then you drop it down, then you drop the bass, and they get all excited again. And you're kind of taking them on a whole journey. The audience, the DJs doing that, and I thought, well, what if that journey was not just dropping the bass and everything else? What if it was there was an actual story? You were getting the singers were maybe giving you some kind of story at the same time that you're dancing and drinking and whatever else you're doing. And so I just kind of put that in my back pocket and thought, maybe someday I'll have a use for this idea. And when I read that Imelda Marcos, the former First Lady of the Philippines, loved going to discos, that she went to Studio 54 and a whole bunch of others, that she had a mirror ball installed in her New York townhouse. I'm surprised you don't have one in that room.
I do, but it's over there. I don't know if you can see it.
There we go.
I have one on the mantle over there. I came prepared.
Yep. So I thought, oh, here's somebody who lives in that world, and maybe there's some kind of correlation. Maybe there's some kind of metaphor for the kind of world of a kind of the insular bubble world of a kind of powerful person like that, and the kind of ecstatic feeling, the ecstatic transcendent feeling that you get kind of on a dance floor. So I thought, okay, I'll start doing the research and see if there's a story there that could be told this way.
Well, I've read that actually, I don't know, you said you didn't go to Studio 54 much in the day, but I've read something that you were actually appalled by the fact that people like Imelda Marcos would go there and sort of be celebrated. The red carpet would be rolled out for them like they were these celebrities when, like dictators were basically going to Studio 54.
This is true. I mean, who am I to judge? But I thought, this is the wife of a dictator. Is this really who you want to be photographed with? Is this really, does this not matter to you, or is everybody glamorous? And that's all that matters. And I thought, no, there's implications in the real world. Yeah. So I thought, this is, the glamorous decadence is sometimes overlooks a little bit, sometimes what's going on in the real world. And we we play on that in the show.
Absolutely.
The audience is kind of seduced by all the music and the dancing and everything like that. And they're being led down the garden path into a dictatorship.
Well, I was going to ask you about, there's such a juxtaposition between the darkness in the Marcos regime story and the hedonism and fun and celebratory feel of disco. And there is a risk of glamorizing or trivializing a story that is, you know, historically a not fun celebratory story. Like, how did you juxtapose these two elements in a way that, you know, made sense, was tasteful, you know, skirted that line?
Yes, if you only saw the first half of the show, you'd think we were celebrating Imelda and her husband. I felt like we have to do that. You have to understand what it feels like to be seduced in that way, the way the Philippine people were. So you, as an audience member, are substituted for the Philippine people. You're cheering on the Marcoses, and you're kind of applauding and dancing with them and everything as they get elected and come to power and everything. So I thought, no, you have to do that. You have to be complicit. And then it matters when things go wrong. If you haven't been seduced, then having a broken heart doesn't matter.
I know that you started, you and Norman, Fatboy Slim, started doing this, I think as long ago as 2005. This idea has been gestating for a while.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So
Could be.
the George W. Bush administration was the backdrop to what was happening at that time. Obviously, you know, we know what's politically going on now. I mean, I feel like the timing of this hitting Broadway with what's going on politically in the world, in America, is there anything about it that sort of evolved politically, you know, with you working on this for almost 20 years
now? The show, although we started it a long time ago, there was a long, I might have been 8 years, a whole development process where you do these, what they call workshops, where you do like, okay, we're just going to do a really pared down version of Act One, see what works, what doesn't work. And in the process, as often happens in these things, I'd cut songs, rewrite new songs, send new stuff to Norman and go, we need another song here. Aquino needs a song. We need, yeah, all this kind of stuff. And so it evolves as we go along. And then, wait a minute, you had a question. Sorry, I got away from.
I mean, I feel like a lot of the themes that you're talking about, you know, being seduced by power actually resonate even more in the last few years than they might have if this had hit Broadway a decade ago or so.
Although I would have liked to have the show on a little bit sooner than now, I'm grateful it's now. And it's true. I think everybody in the audience, when they see what's going on, and the DJ and the actor who plays the DJ says, you know, that democracies are under threat all over the world. The audience understands that, yes, this is now incredibly relevant, more relevant maybe than it was when we first did it. When we first did it, it seemed more a story of the Philippines. And maybe it seemed like, oh, that's far away. That happened to them. And now it seems like, no, now it's in our backyard.
Actually, but speaking of 70s and disco vibes and party vibes and Fatboy Slim, I don't know if there's any connection here. I'm kind of going off on a limb, but one of my favorite videos is by BPA, Brighton Port Authority, the project you have with him. Toe Jam.
Yeah, that was my payback. That Norm Fatboy said, oh, I did all this stuff with you. Now you owe me one.
Really? I mean,
it wasn't quite like that, but yeah, it was kind of like, yeah.
Is there a connection between which one came first?
Brighton Port Authority came after.
Okay.
After we did Here Lies Love, and Norman collaborated on all these songs. He said, you know, I have another project. Think you can come up with like a tune and some words for this other thing I'm working on? And yeah. And I did, and we did this. Yeah, this video is incredible. It's one of the best videos I've ever seen.
Me too.
And we ended up doing the song live in the American Utopia show that we did last year. Yeah.
But I just wondered, because even though it's not really a disco video, it's more like but it's you know, it's kind of like a key party, basically. It's like a swingers party. Very it's good use of censor bars. Whoever did whoever was hired to do the censor bars did a very good job, because I'm sure a lot of people on YouTube like, paused it to see if there was any error or whatever. Was
Yeah.
that the vibe of that video? And I advise anyone who hasn't seen it, watch Toe Jam. It's great. Did that in any way, is there any connection between that and sort of the vibe of, you know, the dance vibe, this party vibe of this production? I know I told you it was a stretch, but I just, if I got you talking about Fatboy Slim, I got to ask about Toe Jam.
Well, thank you. I love the song. The video is incredible, but no, it doesn't really have anything to do with Here Lies Love, except it's Norm and I. Yeah.
Okay. Now that we've got that out of the way, what kind of club culture were you, nightclub environment were you trying to create with the really unique staging of Here Lies Love, which, you know, we haven't even really talked about, but the fact that, you know, if people want to remain seated for this show, they should get a balcony seat because it is an immersive experience, and you become one of the discotheque attendees if you're sitting on the floor where the 900 seats are removed. Like, tell me about the whole process of kind of creating a really unique theater experience for this.
We managed to have a Broadway theater owner agree that we could take out all the orchestra seats, extend the stage out into the house, and basically turn the whole stage and the orchestra into a dance floor. And then we left kind of these little galleries in the balcony for people to sit, so that if you don't want to stand for the show and dance, you can watch from a nice cushy seat. And there's still actors who will come up and be close to you and engage you. But most of it, most of the time you have a little more comfort. It's a little more cushy if you don't want to stand. Getting the theater owner to commit to ripping out all their seats on the orchestra and everything, that's a thing. But it works. When you walk in the theater, it's pretty hard to picture, where is the stage? Where was the stage? How did they transform this into a club? Because it looks like you're really just walking into a club. Mm-hmm. Other than the balcony where people are kind of seated in conventional theater seats. So
if I'm not mistaken, isn't this theater the same theater where Evita originally made its Broadway debut? I feel I
don't know. I know it's where Miss Saigon was for a long time.
Well, there's definitely, I brought up Evita because, you know, even just reading recent reviews of Here, like, you know, it gets name checked. There's obviously similarities to the idea of, you know, wife of a dictator becomes like media darling, you know, becomes drunk with power, et cetera, et cetera. I'm doing a pretty simple paraphrasing there, but, you know, was Evita in any way, and, you know, in your mind when you were creating this from the beginning?
No, I hadn't seen it. I was aware of her. I was aware that maybe there might be a similarity there, but I thought, with all the various nuances and kind of other threads in Imelda's story, I think it's different enough. Purposely, then once I started on it, that I'm not going to go look at it. I'm not going to go to the show. I'm not going to look at the Madonna movie until I'm all done.
Okay. All right. The Madonna movie is good. She was nominated for a Golden Globe. So, you know, I recommend, but yeah. Actually, I know I keep threading these. I'm 0 for 2 with the connections or whatever, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention, obviously, the fact that Stop Making Sense this month is getting re-released. And I wonder if there's any kind of connection there in terms of the staging, like the staging for Stop Making Sense starts off kind of like small and kind of sparse, and then it like continues to populate with each song. And, you know, like I see like maybe a similar kind of way the Here Lies Love unfolds. Is there any connection there?
There's a connection with Stop Making Sense in that back then I began to question why do we always stage shows the same way? Maybe we can rethink the way shows are staged, and maybe you don't have to just assume, well, we're going to do it this way because that's the way it's always done. Well, I thought, well, maybe something else might be more appropriate to what you're doing. So that was maybe the first time I thought, oh, let's kind of rethink what a rock concert could be, how we can stage it, how we can build it, as you said, little by little, and let the audience see how the whole show is put together, how the music's put together, how the staging is put together, and then kind of flick the switch and put it all into action.
I have to ask, what did you think, if you have seen it, of Fred Armisen's documentary Now parody? I think their band was called Test Pattern.
Yes.
But I mean, it was very obvious what it was an homage to, and they did in my opinion, a pretty brilliant job. But I got to ask what you thought of it if you saw it.
I think they did a pretty brilliant job. I was in a club once, a small club here in New York, to see a different act. And Fred got up. He was like the opening act. He got up and did an imitation of me and didn't know that I was in the audience. And it was great. He was really good. And he came over immediately afterwards and goes, "Oh, I had no idea you were here. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I hope it didn't bother you. I hope it didn't." And I thought, no. It was brilliant. Yeah.
That's pretty good. I mean, he obviously, it was very much done with love, and with a lot of it, the documentary Now thing, a lot of attention to detail.
Yes. It's kind of incredible what they do.
Wow. You mentioned obviously American Utopia before, and you also mentioned about the idea of staging a show kind of differently than one would expect. The first time I actually saw your American Utopia concert experience was at Coachella, 2018, I believe. I know Beyonce played that day, but that was my favorite thing I saw that day. It was just, especially at a festival setting, I don't think people who maybe wandered over to the outdoor stage you were playing expected what we saw. And it was amazing. So I'm curious about, not just doing that concert tour, but also, of course, doing American Utopia on Broadway, with you having had kind of different iterations of Here Lies Love for, a while. How did the success of that tour and the Broadway production of American Utopia change and influence the evolution of this production? I mean, imagine the success of the Broadway production American Utopia maybe changed things for Here Lies Love. Here Lies Love.
Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe the success of the American Utopia show on Broadway helped us get backing and funding and acceptance.
Well, that helps.
Maybe it did. I'm not sure. Nobody said, "Oh, people are backing you because of that show." But I thought, maybe you have a successful show and people go, "Well, maybe he can do it again." Yeah.
It didn't change in terms of how you staged the production.
Oh, no.
Changed it. Okay.
We kept the staging pretty much the same, other than engaging the balcony a little bit more.
Did you have trouble getting funding for Here Lies Love? Did you have to campaign for that?
I did. I wouldn't say it was trouble, but it was, probably with any Broadway show, it's work.
I imagine. I mean, I'm not super familiar with the world. What does it entail? Do you talk to some board of directors with like a PowerPoint, or what do you do?
Yeah, sometimes you go talk to people. You invite them to a rehearsal. You show them the materials and play them the music and do all that kind of stuff, and show them maybe clips from when you did it before. And you're going, "Okay, we want your money," and it might be a little while before you get it all back.
I mean, obviously you have a name brand of a respected name, a known name, and obviously you have success in all sorts of areas of entertainment, including now Broadway. But was it a hard sell? Were people like, disco, Imelda Marcos, rip out the seats of the theater?
It's a little bit much, it's they're thinking, "Wow, is this really going to work on Broadway? Is this going to work for the Broadway audience that comes in on buses and people coming in from out of town and just want to see, a show they've heard about?" You're trying to sell them on that basis, not just whether New Yorkers will like it, but you're trying to go like, will everybody who passes through town like this kind of show? So yeah, you're trying to sell that idea.
And how is it? I mean, Hedwig went on Broadway, and Broadway can be a bit edgier than maybe people assume, but how has it gone over with, the tourists in, New York who maybe didn't know what they were they didn't know they were about to enter a disco when they bought tickets to hear Lies Love and just thought, oh, let's go see a Broadway show. How's it
Yeah,
gone
look at
over?
this. Look at this one. What's this one? Okay, let's go see this. I've heard from people who saw it and didn't know what to expect. And sometimes they said, oh, standing room? Come on, no, I'm not going to pay those prices to have to stand. Okay, I'm going to sit. And then they sit and they have a good time and they go, I think it looks like it might be more fun to stand and dance. So sometimes they come again.
Was there ever, because if you sit in different or not sit, if you stand in different parts of the theater, you probably get a very
different, yeah, you see different things and you have kind of closer kind of reactions and interactions with different actors.
That's smart. I hope that was in the PowerPoint. Like, hey, people will go again multiple times, multiple
Yes.
ticket sales,
Yeah,
repeat business.
Exactly.
Was there ever any talk, especially when maybe you were in the selling stages of it, of you being in the show in some way? Because, you're not in this one as an actor or as a performer. Was there ever talk
nope, it never came up. The show is all the actors are Filipino, so I don't qualify.
You went to the Philippines to do research for this, right?
Oh yeah, I've been a couple of times. When I was in the writing stage, I went and played my demos for people there and said, am I way off base? Is this okay? You tell me if I'm wrong. Yeah. No,
And
they I learned some things, actually. I learned some things, but they were in general very helpful. They connected me with footage, our archival footage, which we use in the show, showing the actual historical events and all that kind of stuff. So that was super helpful.
I'm also curious, just when I'm talking about threading things, about just in general, your embrace of dance and not necessarily the typical forms of dance. I mean, I've interviewed Tony Basil about that, and about Cross-Eyed and Painless as well. Tony Basil's like one of my idols, and that was a big, she's done so many things, but the fact that she was involved with Talking Heads early on, and then of course we've mentioned Stop Making Sense, and I've mentioned Toe Jam, just like in general, like, have you always had a fascination with dance culture? Are you a dance? I don't know if you're a trained dancer yourself. You ever taken dance?
I'm not a trained dancer, but I love to dance. It took me a while to realize like my own quirky movements were okay.
Oh.
And that I could Tony helped me with that I could kind of come up with my own kind of dance choreography and vocabulary. I didn't have to like do what the trained dancers did. I could come up with my own stuff. So that was super helpful. On this, Stop Making Sense, we kind of did kind of a similar process to what Tony used to do, where you would have people just kind of jam and move the way they wanted and what they felt at a particular point. And then you go, that's good. Keep that. Don't do that other thing. Keep that. And then eventually you do that enough, you start to get like, oh, this is what happens here. And this is what happens here. On Here Lies Love, I worked with Annie B. Parson, someone I'd worked with before on other shows. She worked on American Utopia as well. And we've worked together. And so, yeah, I worked with Twyla Tharp, the choreographer, years ago. Once Talking Heads got past the initial stage of not moving whatsoever, then I totally embraced dance and choreography and movement and everything on stage. Yeah.
I'm curious, at first you thought, I mean, I'm paraphrasing what you just said, but you said something along the lines of how at first you didn't feel comfortable with that. What was the breakthrough that made you feel comfortable with like your own dance expression on stage, which is very unique?
I think it was, coming to accept that my movement as different as it was from kind of conventional rock dancing or whatever it might be, that was okay, that I could develop my own vocabulary and my own style of doing it. And that was going to be all right. Just let it develop little by little, let it take its time. But before that, I thought, I'd rather not do anything than try and do what other people are doing and fail.
Well, it's interesting because, we started this interview with talking about Studio 54, but the era in New York in which you came up, I think, is a fascinating era for that fact that like rock and dance were intersecting. We had, CBGB and we had Studio 54, and, there were a lot of like dance rock bands. I mean, this British band, but like Gang of Four, I think so much goes back to Gang of Four, to Talking Heads, like, what are your memories of the time? There was this whole like disco sucks bullshit that happened in 1979 that was kind of a backlash to dance music from the rockist world, but I feel it was a pretty interesting time where rock and dance kind of did that for a while.
There was a nice moment there where there was an intersection, as you said, with rock and dance and hip hop and disco, disco and club music. Everything was possible. You could kind of integrate and mix all those kinds of things. That felt right.
Why do you think? I mean, obviously we still hear that today in music today, but there was that backlash where things kind of got more siloed. Here's rock.
Yes, they did.
Dance. Why did that happen?
I would say race. That right now we still have radio stations that are called, the rock station, and then we have an urban station, which actually means black, but it doesn't mean just people who live in cities.
Yeah,
it means So it's still the radio in the U.S. is still, as it became eventually. It wasn't always, as it became very segregated. But who knows? Maybe that'll break down.
I hope so. When you were starting out, or when Talking Heads were coming to prominence, did you get any flack for the fact that from rock fans or whatever, for the fact that you definitely had, dance incorporating your music? Was that ever a thing that was a concern for you?
We got a little bit of pushback. There was some fans who were like, "Oh, I liked you when you were kind of a smaller band and you were edgier." That kind of thing. You always get that. No, most of the reaction that way was from radio. They felt that we'd gotten a little too funky for white folks, and so there was resistance to playing some of our music for a little while, and then eventually we kind of crossed over, and it was fine.
It was very fine. Were you surprised at how successful you got at the time? Not just radio, MTV, of course, because and I say this in the fondest and most positive way. You were a weird band, you were a quirky band, whatever. You were unique, whatever word you want to use, in the best possible way, but not necessarily like a mainstream pop act in how you sounded or looked. And yet you had that kind of success, fairly early on, but certainly by like burning down the house and stuff. Like, did that surprise you? And was that ever something you had in your sights?
It both surprised me and didn't surprise me. It surprised me because, as you said, I was well aware that we were kind of not your normal kind of band that was out there. We're kind of quirky and odd. And I thought, okay, this is kind of a long shot. But our audience kept growing. And of course, as everybody does who makes music or whatever, we believed in what we were doing, and we felt, oh, this sounds pretty good. It's good, so people are going to like it, which isn't always the case, but we got pretty lucky there.
You did. It wasn't just luck, but yeah, it was probably maybe being in the right place at the right time. I do feel like it wasn't just luck, but I do feel it was kind of, with MTV being new and playing once in a lifetime and playing all your amazing videos, like that was important for, I think, a lot of bands, for your peers as well, for a lot of new wave bands.
I agree with that we were lucky that MTV came along, because it gave us a visual outlet that we could kind of latch on to. It was kind of like, oh yeah, we knew how to do this.
Well, you've obviously always been visual. You've got these Broadway productions. We talked about Stop Making Sense. I'm curious because, Here Lies Love is, as I've mentioned, dates back a while. And I think it was like 2010 when you did the album that had like Sia and Cyndi Lauper. I'm looking at some names, Tori Amos, St. Vincent, who you've obviously collaborated with before, Florence Welch, this all-star album. Has there ever been talk about doing some kind of like, I don't know, like the Who's Tommy or whatever, like a Here Lies Love with a bunch of like rock star guests, like an all-star version of it or anything like that?
I'd love to hear all those people. There's some of those people singing it. Probably couldn't get all of them. I'd love to hear some of them singing it. But I think I'll leave it to somebody else to do all the logistics. That sounds like
Okay.
an awful lot of, wow, man, planning something like that. But they could do it like as a concert, something like that.
I'd be into it. Well, I want like a movie version. I want like the big screen rock opera. Is there any possibility that this could be Here Lies Love could be a film at some point?
Nothing yet. Nothing yet. Talking to different people, see if there's any interest in that, but no, nothing yet.
It would have to probably be in 3D, I would think.
That's exactly it. It has to be in 3D or like on the screens or like all around you.
Like a VR situation, AR situation for that immersive thing. I haven't actually, I'd like before I let you go to ask a little bit more about the immersiveness of the Broadway production in like, how, I'm not an expert on this thing, so I'm asking from a complete like layperson's point of view, but like, how did you create such a unique experience in terms of like, there's the stage hands that like, they're part of the act. They like guide people around and, they're kind of like disco ushers or whatever. Can you tell me a little bit more about bringing that vision to life?
I had great collaborators. Alex Timbers, the director, is an amazing talent. I was introduced to him, well, as you can imagine, some years ago. He worked on the earlier version of the show. And at that time, he'd done a couple of immersive shows that I really liked. And so he knew what kind of problems you run up against. He knew the logistics of those kinds of things. And he was a good director. So that was good. David Corrins is a set designer who took my idea of having the singers on little platforms around the periphery and just took it even further, had a platform right in the middle that would rotate around and, took the things that I've been thinking and took them even further than I could even imagine. So yeah, all kind of, a lot of credit goes to them.
Was there a certain club you had in mind? I mean, obviously I keep mentioning Studio 54, but club culture has changed so much. I don't know if the kind of discos that Imelda Marcos was attending like really exist anymore.
I don't think they do either. Yeah. And when I was thinking, imagining this show way back, there were still giant discos in London and New York and other places, like big warehouses with lots and lots of people in this one huge room or whatever. And then after some years, the dance clubs got smaller and got divided up into like VIP lounges and a bottle room and a bar room and this and that. And so it wasn't like one all huge democratic dance floor.
Right.
It became like this more kind of partition thing. And I thought, oh, well, I guess we can't do this in clubs anymore because the clubs have changed.
Well, you could always, if you wanted to get more financial backing, you could tell in your PowerPoint, like, oh, we're going to have a bottle service, like roped off area now for the VIPs who want to pay more. But I wouldn't want to do that. I like the idea when we talk, when I say I'd love to go to Studio 54, it's like the idea that like, yeah, there might be Grace Jones or Bianca Jagger or Imelda Marcos, over there, and then just like regular folk like myself over here,
Yeah, it's nice when everybody's mixed together.
I have one last question is, pertaining to the fact that this has been going on for a while. Like, I assume at this point Imelda knows about this play, right? I mean,
I assume so
musical,
too.
I
I
mean.
assume she must know, but she knew about it last time when we did it 10 years ago. The only reaction I heard, I think it was some BBC reporter asked her about it. She said, "Oh, me? You did somebody did a show about me?" Yeah, that kind of thing. But I haven't heard anything
Okay.
about this. Yeah.
Was that a concern that there'd be some kind of cease and desist or what, or that she wouldn't be thrilled about it, that she'd try to put a halt to it? I mean, or that, maybe she loves the idea of it. But was that a concern?
A cease and desist, wouldn't have any merit, but it might
Okay.
actually have helped us as far as publicity goes. Yes.
I mean, I could put that out there, but obviously
Yes.
it's just a rumor.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how cease and desist work. I told you I'm a layperson, but was there any concern there'd be any kind of backlash or protest, or her trying to stop it, or her people trying to stop it?
No, we didn't have any concern that way. Our only concern was, as we discussed before, that in the beginning of the show, you and the audience are being seduced by the rise of the Marcoses and their coming to power and how glamorous and wonderful they are. And so if you only know about that, you think it's a show celebrating them. So we thought, yeah, there might be some confused misperceptions about the show that way. But if they see the whole show, that'll all get corrected.
There's not anyone like walking out during intermission and like
going, "Hey, wait a minute, we're not here to celebrate dictators."
I
Yeah.
assume that's not happening. I assume people
No,
are
no.
staying for the whole thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about while I have you? This has been such a treat and an honor to speak with you, David. And you always have so many other things going on. Is there any other music or projects you have in the works?
Not yet. Maybe soon, but nothing yet.
Well,
No, it's been fun. Hope this all works out for you.
I think it's
your
worked.
side.
It's worked out great, and it has been fun. And yeah, next time you got anything you're working on, I'd be happy to speak with you again. It's been really lovely speaking with you.